Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Friday, June 14th. Over the next few days, we will definitely have increases to fire potential across the Great Basin. Today, winds will increase along the Sierra Front into western Nevada with dry conditions with wind gusts around 30 or 35 miles per hour. So definitely could see an increase in fire potential from an increase in winds that we haven't seen the last couple of days. Also some mixed isolated wet and dry thunderstorms over the eastern portion of the Great Basin, and you can see our line here on our map indicating where our critical fuels are south of this line. As we move into Saturday, we will see stronger winds as an area of low pressure moves across the north up in Idaho. However, fuels aren't critical and relative humidity will be on the higher side up in Idaho and Wyoming on Saturday. We'll also have an increase in winds in southern areas with wind gusts between 30 and 35 miles per hour and relative humidity below about 12% in southern areas. And then on Sunday, we will see a further increase in winds over southern areas of the Great Basin. So it's really southern and western areas of the Great Basin that we are most focused on with these winds and dry conditions along with the critical fuels. Over the last 24 hours, we've seen some isolated showers and thunderstorms across parts of Nevada with a little bit more concentration up into Idaho and drier conditions across Utah. Our Great Basin fire activity, we have seen an increase in fire activity with smaller fires popping up around the Great Basin. Some fires seeing some size in the hundreds of acres over parts of western Nevada, and we are even seeing some size increases in the far south. Still some prescribed burning going on, which should continue to dwindle here over the coming weeks. Over the last 7 to 14 days, the only precipitation we've really seen has been over the northern third of the Great Basin, and we've seen some pockets of near or above normal precipitation for the last 2 weeks, but for the most part, very dry conditions, especially over the southern and western half of the region. We've also seen very hot temperatures recently. Our ERC map, ERCs continue to climb over the southern and western areas of the Great Basin. Many areas in the south are above the 80th or 90th percentile, even some areas popping up above the 97th percentile. Further north, we are seeing some drying across Idaho, but ERCs are still below the 70th percentile. And we are seeing some more significant drying over western Nevada as well, with a couple of spots increasing above 50 or 70%. Looking at some of our ERC charts, you can see here over western Nevada where winds will be gusty today with dry conditions. ERCs have really risen with these hot and dry conditions we've seen recently and are now again above the 80th percentile in some spots. Further south, however, is where our ERCs are really high and definitely near records for the time of year in some areas, but certainly well above normal and above that 90th percentile. Our satellite loop from this morning shows an area of low pressure over Southern California, which is moving eastward, and this is responsible for our expected showers and thunderstorms today over the eastern half of Utah, and you can see that moisture already in place. We have another area of low pressure off the northwest coast, which will move eastward, and this will bring our increase in winds today over western Nevada, but also tomorrow over the north. So looking at our weather conditions for later this afternoon, that low will sweep eastward, pushing a lot of that moisture off to the east late today into tomorrow. Our high risk for today is just over western areas of Nevada into the Sierra Front, where winds again will be increasing with the continued dry conditions. We've already seen an uptick in fire activity in these areas, and these winds should enhance that today. Otherwise, just dry conditions over the south, but winds not quite as strong yet in the southern areas of the Great Basin. Relative humidity will remain into the single digits to teens across much of Nevada and Utah, except over central and eastern Utah where that moisture will be in place for those showers and thunderstorms. And then you can see the wind gusts on the right, the strongest wind gust today over western Nevada. Still some breezy winds in Idaho and Wyoming, however, again, relative humidity higher and fuels not critical. Temperatures will continue to decrease gradually going into the weekend, so we'll see highs mainly in the low to mid 90s over much of Nevada and Utah, 107 for Las Vegas, and then you can see the probability of precipitation here on the right just for the eastern side of the geographic area. Going into Saturday, that low off the northwest coast sweeps across Idaho and into the northern Rockies, increasing those winds, but we won't see winds quite as strong over western Nevada going into Saturday. So we don't have any high risk on Saturday, although we will see some breezy winds over northern Nevada, also some breezy winds in the south, but again, kind of marginal for our high risk. So looking at the wind gusts on Saturday, again, a decrease over western Nevada. Relative humidity still dry in the single digits and actually dries out even further on Saturday. Winds will be breezy across Utah, but most of those gusts in the 25 to 30 mile per hour range, with the strongest winds up north. Again, relative humidity will be higher across Idaho, but we will see pretty strong winds with gusts over 40 or 45 miles per hour. So still something to keep an eye on, even though fuels are not critical and RH will be elevated. Temperatures continue to drop on Saturday as the system passes by to the north. We'll see more highs in the 80s for much of Nevada and Utah, and highs up in the 60s and 70s up in Idaho, with actually 50s in the higher elevations. On Sunday, we have another area of low pressure dropping south off the northwest coast, with still dry conditions across much of the Great Basin. Winds will kick up a little bit with southerly winds over southern Utah and the Arizona Strip, so we do have some high risk for these windy or breezy and dry conditions on Sunday. And you can see, looking at the relative humidity, still around 10% in the far south, but those winds really start to pick up in Arizona and southern and eastern Utah, with more gusts in the 35 to 40 mile per hour range, or even some spots a little bit higher. So fire potential definitely starting to pick up in southern areas of the Great Basin with those winds. And temperatures remain in the low to mid 80s and in the 70s and 60s up north, with dry conditions on Sunday. 3-day precipitation, you can see generally only up in Idaho. We will see some showers and thunderstorms moving through, and also into eastern Utah with those thunderstorms today. Going into Monday is when we see a much stronger system to move across the Great Basin, and this will continue to drop our temperatures, but also bring some pretty windy conditions for most areas of the Great Basin. Right now, we only have high risk for the Arizona Strip and the southern portions of Utah. However, we could see these gustier winds with dry conditions even further west and north, and we'll be monitoring that for the possibility of high risk in other areas of the Great Basin going into Monday. So definitely a windy day on tap with still dry conditions despite the decrease in temperature. On Tuesday, this system starts to push eastward. We still could have some breezy winds over southeast Utah, but right now it looks like the stronger winds will be further to the east, so we'll continue to watch that for any high risk. And then on Wednesday, just drier conditions with generally a trough in place, and then continuing on Thursday. But again, the strongest winds look like they will be over this weekend into the early part of next week. The 7-day precipitation is mainly a lot what we'll see here in the next few days, but with this system moving through on Monday, we'll see a better chance of more widespread showers up north in Idaho and Wyoming, and some pretty cold temperatures even in the higher elevations, so we could even see some mixed precipitation up in the high elevations of Idaho on Monday. The 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us through the middle or the end of June, the 21st through the 27th, shows still warm temperatures across the Great Basin and drier conditions over the western half of the region. Could see some moisture creeping up later in June in the Four Corners area. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Sunday is when we'll start our 7-day operation, so check back on Sunday for the webcast for the latest updates.